For many countries, the split between goods and services and the determination of tax is very important. By default, we will set our rules up to assume that either everything you are buying is goods or everything you're buying is services. So you will need to check beforehand to see what the default value is. What that means is that we then assume everything is either goods, for example, and then we only need rules to prove when it is services. The way that this works is if you are linking a transaction to a purchase order, then every single purchase order will either be set as goods or services. And that is distinguished by the purchasing line type. Anything that is an amount-based line type will come through as a service tax product type. Anything that is a quantity-based line type will come through as a goods-based tax product type. So it's very important. So don't use goods and services by amount, for example, because that will just come through as a service in terms of tax. It's a bit of a design flaw with regards to how the solution is set up. So when we have a transaction in here, this is a foreign entered transaction where the split between goods and services is important. If we come down here, we see we have by default import services. So for this particular setup, the default is import services. So how do I change this? How do I change this from a tax point of view? If we look at our tax information here, and we can also shortcut by clicking on the tax, there's nothing here that really says goods or services. And that's because the product type field is currently hidden. If we go to our view, columns, and then go down to tax, if we find the value here called product type, and bring that one back in, you'll see that this one is null at the moment. The reason for this is that this particular transaction is not linked to a purchase order. If it was linked to a purchase order, then you would have either goods or services here. If this is null, our default stance is services. So I can now change this value to goods, for example. If I change the tax and do the calculate tax, and we can now see we have GBVAT import goods. If I change the product type to services, so previously it was null, we then changed it to goods, and now I'm changing it back to services, and I hit the calculate tax, you'll see here that it's gone back to services. So if you need to change the product type, i.e. whether a item that you're buying is either goods or services, you need to make sure you have selected the product type. If you do not and it is null, it will take the assumed default. For this particular scenario, it was defaulting in as services, but for your company, it may default in as goods.